Greetings everyone, on today's video I'm going to talk about my top 10 rides over at Disney California Adventure. Let's roll that intro. Yes, I'm back with another top 10 list. You guys seem to like the one at Disneyland so much, people are like, we should do one like for DCA. So guess what? That's what I'm doing here today. Let's get to it. Let's establish a few things before I dive in. Much like my last top 10 video about Disneyland rides, shameless plug, this is my own personal list of favorite attractions. While things like theming, immersive environments, wait times, and thrills all play major factors, the biggest elements to me are subjective. Meaning that like every other piece of entertainment or art, the true beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Also, memories, random interactions with other guests, and family are huge considerations here too. Finally, this list is, like the last one, fluid and is subject to change. Enough preamble, let's get to it. Grizzly River Run. If this was a top 10 list all about aesthetics, this one would probably take the cake for yours truly. The setting here is definitely one of my favorites, and I'm always happy to walk through this scenic forest. However, what may look like a tranquil tableau is actually just a disguise for one of the most thrilling attractions anywhere on Disneyland property. This one is for the gamblers, the adrenaline junkies, and the downright unlucky. Boarding a roulette raft, my terminology, not Disney's, you are whisked along whitewater rapids and down devastating drops where fear dogs you at every turn. In this ride, everyone can hear you scream. You can actually see in this footage here that I am genuinely terrified because I was not planning on riding that day, clutching my backpack full of cameras like a fresh new baby. I mistakenly decided to sit next to one of the entrances and exits to the roulette raft though. A fatal mistake. On top of the possible drenching, the raft seemed to spin much more aggressively than I remember years ago. Then why does this ride make my top 10 list, you might ask? Well, despite the soppiness, spinning, and lack of actual bear animatronic, I just enjoy it. While I may not ride it often, it is a throwback to what the park originally started out as. I understand that it was a more budgeted park, but it had a really strong theme celebrating what makes and made California so cool. Plus, it gave us the icon of the park, which I very much appreciate. As I have said, if I ever get to stay at the Grand Californian again, and I have a free night, I will ride this thing a bunch of times in a row before retreating to my hotel room for a long, hot shower. One of my criticisms for a lot of the attractions in DCA is that many of them feel like just carnival rides. There isn't anything inherently wrong with that, and Paradise Pier back in the day was supposed to emulate an amusement park of old. However, when I'm in Disneyland, I want theming. Backstory, aesthetics, and an overall feel are very important to me. Thus, we enter Radiator Springs, which has all of this in spades. Easily one of Disney's best themed environments, I feel that this particular land can elevate the aforementioned carnival ride. This neatly leads me to Tow Mater's Junkyard Jamboree. From the outside looking in, this ride looks about as bare bones as they come. Just sit in a tractor and go round and round to the musical stylings of Mater. This implied simplicity belies the true nature of this lateral G beast. I like to bring up the goat trick on Big Thunder in a lot of my videos where you turn and watch the goat on the second lift hill and smash your body into the side of your train car, or possibly your friends and family. That's pretty much what you're getting here, but way more often. The genius is in this sort of figure 8 design where you end up in these near-miss scenarios with other riders, all while getting whipped about. For me, it is impossible to not have fun on this attraction, and I think it's sort of an underrated gem. On top of that, like a lot of things during Halloween time in Radiator Springs, it gets a minor spooky overlay to go in line with Halloween, which gets it bonus points in my book. I also want to mention why I chose this instead of Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters, which won't make it on this list. For Luigi's, I find the ending and random patterns to be fun, but they lack the visceral and consistent punches found on Mater's. Both are good, but I'm giving this one to the tow truck. Wait a second. Didn't I just say I wanted more theming, and now I'm talking about Goofy's Sky School, which is basically just a Mad Mouse coaster with an iconic character? Allow me to explain. While they freely admit that this particular attraction has little in the way of a compelling narrative, it more than makes up for it in how terrifyingly fun it is. Fear minus death equals thrills, as Tony Baxter and the Imagineers like to say, and this ride is the poster child of this concept. We're talking 180-degree turns that make you feel like you're about to go careening off into Paradise Gardens. If you can accept your own feeble mortality, the ride also provides some of the best views in the park. I especially enjoy waving to those lucky ducks in the Grand Californian. Still, I can't decide if riding during the day or night is more terrifying. Let me know what you think. I also forgot to mention that there are a few substantial drops in here too, and you can really feel them. While a re-theme, much like another coaster I'll be discussing later on in this list, I think the wackadoo nature of Goofy fits perfectly in line with those old-style how-to cartoons of his and this attraction. All in all, Goofy Sky School might not be a thematic tour de force, but it more than makes up for it with a ride experience unlike anything else on property. Plus, getting evac off it really burned it into my memory banks. Ah, the Disney Dark Ride, a staple and a classic among the parks across the world. I'm a pretty big fan of this sort of attraction, especially the longer format Omnimover style, such as the Haunted Mansion, which The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Undersea Adventure, is very much akin to in this ride style. This attraction has sort of been my go-to ride in DCA for a long time. In the past, the wait was pretty manageable, never exceeding 20 minutes or so in my own personal experience. Like most of the Fantasyland Dark rides, it lays out the story of the fairy tale in a truncated version. Unlike those classic attractions, though, this ride has more time to breathe, which is ironic seeing as most of it's under simulated water. Really the most immersive attractions in the park, you get it? All jokes aside, Ariel's is more than 3 times longer than most other dark rides based on those old tales, which leads to a nice reprieve from the heat. While I wish we could have seen the original concept for this ride come to life, which was much more similar to Peter Pan's Flight, I think the clam Omnimovers work well to direct your attention. I also sort of wish we could have gotten a better resolution to Ursula instead of her just yelling in the background, but I get it. Her animatronic, on the other hand, is incredible and easily my favorite part of the ride. Also, the music is consistently a joy to listen to and a nice reminder of where the Disney animation renaissance began. Let's keep the list rolling with another dark ride. Monsters, Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue is a quaint little attraction. Despite the fact that its exterior queue line is desperately bare bones, and the ride itself is built on the bones of one of Disney's most infamous attractions, I still really like this ride. I want to begin by discussing the interior queue. The novel idea of transporting you to the monster world via a bus taxi station is delightful. Commercials for the Chamber of Commerce play above old-style payphones, and there is a lot of cute theming found throughout. It's all but a prelude to a cozy little attraction filled with most of all the major players from the movie. I imagine the water noose animatronic attacking the car wasn't in the budget, but the limited movement of the figures has a certain charm to it. Little sensory effects like Pepper's ghost or the smell of wasabi or lemon are great touches. My feeling is to pretty much only ride this one at night, while going along with most of the scenes that seem to take place after the monster's sun sets. It makes the queue infinitely more bearable. If only I could pick this ride up and place it gently in Pixar Pier where it belongs. Quick break in the middle of this to thank all the patrons making this list possible. I appreciate you so much, and if you aren't supporting the channel yet, consider checking out the link in the description. Now, on to number 5. As someone who was terrified of the Tower of Terror as a child, I'm somewhat amazed how much these drop rides have risen in my estimation over time. While I still may be more partial to the spooky atmosphere of the original, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout is a very fun attraction. The interior queue is a bunch of fun Easter eggs, shout out to Figment and Cosmo, and the pre-show contains a wonderful rocket animatronic with a fun story setup to get you to put your hands up in the air. I do find it somewhat comical that the boiler room section is still very creepy, even though they have a few more props like Harold looming over you in an almost junk drawer style attic. I digress, but the actual ride experience itself is always a blast. Much of it, like Cosmic Rewind in Florida, depends on the music. While they still won't play Bodies, even though I request it every time, the tunes play well with this visceral feeling of being shot upwards and pulled downwards. I understand a lot of folks aren't interested in this one because of the height factor, but except for one moment looking out over the park, it's sort of hard to tell how high up you really are. Learning to lean into the feeling of weightlessness has been a challenge for me, but the more I ride it, the more I enjoy it. Easily one of the most thrilling attractions, and I'm happy to ride this one anytime, especially when the metal starts cranking for Monsters After Dark at Halloween time. Oh, so good! It's the best shooter on all of Disneyland property, in my humble opinion. Moving on. Okay, fine, we'll talk about it, why it ranks so highly for me. Toy Story Midway Mania is such a fun ride, and it fits in perfectly with the idea of Pixar Pier. The Midway Carnival style really lends itself well to the toys themselves, and to be honest, I'm not even a huge Toy Story guy. Shocking, I know. This ride also has, like most of the other shooting style attractions, some excellent re-rideability, meaning that it sort of spurs you to ride again and again to get a better score. One aspect this attraction has over its counterparts, however, is that the actual ride experience is somewhat thrilling. Not knowing how your cart will turn or pivot between the various shooting galleries is such a whimsical treat. I can say that the queue line and actual shooting apparatus are things I would personally modify if given the chance, but I always have a ball on this one. Top 3 time, baby, and let's kick this one off with a bang. The Incredicoaster, which I sort of teased earlier in this list, is just a healthy dose of adrenaline every time you ride it. From that tense launch section to massive hill climbs and even into a full inversion, it really provides just enough thrill for me personally without going completely overboard. While a sort of reskin of an existing coaster, I think that what Incredicoaster attempts to do with its story is sort of admirable. Telling a cohesive narrative featuring most of the main characters from The Incredibles while zipping by at high speeds is something I haven't really seen on any other roller coaster Disney has to offer. Sure, the figures are static and the effects are minimal, but it's at least something. This is all punctuated and dominated by the crazy good score from the film, which goes a long way with me. Like Big Thunder and Matterhorn, it also provides a dynamic offering of differing views and feeling depending on what time of the day you ride it. I truly enjoy the Incredicoaster, and my journeys on it have given me some of my best DCA memories. If you've watched any of my work for just about any amount of time, you'll know that I am not a huge fan of screen-based attractions. As someone who stares at screens far too often, I prefer the practical nature of older rides. The immersion I sense when riding Pirates or Haunted is really tough to beat. However, if there have to be rides that utilize screens, I either want them to convey something nearly impossible to create practically, or be the whole experience. Soarin' falls neatly into the latter. Quick little backstory to provide some more context as to why I love this ride. Back in the early 2000s, they were running previews for the ride and were allowing guests in the know to pretty much skip the line and ride it again and again and again. I happened to be in one of those groups, and let me tell you, it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Sure, I had seen massive movie screens before, but this felt different. The way the gliders tilt, the gorgeous scenery, the music, and just overall execution made it feel unique. Also, the smells. The smells. Might just be the birthplace of one of my mottos, it's all citrus. This was also at a time where somewhat hokey pre-shows reigned supreme. I'm talking Dinosaur, Test Track, and of course, Soarin' Over California. Love you, Patrick. While I enjoy both versions of the attraction today, Over California has to be my pick, and when it's in town for a month every year, I do my best to go ride it. Feels like stepping back in time and really ties in the interior queue line with all the California aviators in a neat way. No matter the version though, Soarin' is always a joy for me to partake in, and I can't wait for my next ride. Much like my last number 1 pick over in Disneyland, I find this particular attraction to contain all the aspects of a premier theme park ride. An interesting world with a compelling story mixed with some thrills sprinkled throughout makes Radiator Springs Racers my favorite in the park. Taking the concept of a classic Disney dark ride and adding some exciting elements is precisely what I look for when it comes to the best of the best. It also helps that, like Mater's, it is nestled in truly one of Disney's best themed lands. Have I said that before? One of my favorite aspects of this ride is the lead up. Seeing the eponymous Radiator Springs is a touch of detail that I absolutely adore because it provides context to the whole area. Not to mention that the line and ride itself falls neatly into that dynamic category I go on and on about, meaning that depending on the time of day or night one rides, the experience can shift. For many years, I've been a fan of the slot car style ride system that Radiator Springs Racers adopted from Test Track. It feels like a stroke of genius to implement a toy-like device and crank it up to accommodate 6 guests per ride vehicle. Like any good tale, the ride knows how to gradually introduce guests to the world with a lovely drive around Ornament Valley before fully immersing them into the world of cars. This ride is all about ebb and flow, or a specific cadence, if you will. It vacillates between calm and energetic. The intro is calm, but the Mack truck jump scare and train are exciting. Then, it's on to the easygoing introduction of the sheriff and mater before the raucous tractor tipping. As you can see, this change between cold and hot, in a way, makes the ride feel so full and lengthy. I just love racing around in the dark to avoid Frank right before I see the scaled-down version of Radiator Springs. I am of two minds about seeing this town represented in the ride, though. On one hand, it kind of breaks my immersion a little, seeing as I just walked through the place to get to the ride. On the other, I like seeing the cars hanging out in their own little community. Am I the only one who thinks about this stuff? Let me know in the comments. Despite that, I still enjoy this portion of the ride. The split between Luigi's and Ramon's, somewhat like the race at the end, adds a nice sense of re-rideability, as you never quite know which side you'll end up on. This is all but a prelude to the big finale and a pretty unique feature as you end up racing another car. Regardless if you win or lose, the race itself is really fun. Plus, that ending in the sleepy taillight caverns is divine. I could keep going on and on about this ride, but suffice it to say I thoroughly enjoy Radiator Springs Racers. It showcases what the Imagineers are truly capable of when a particular idea meets the perfect ride system, and it's easily my favorite attraction in all of Disney California Adventure. I hope you guys enjoyed the video here today. I know I did. It was fun to make. You know, it was a little bit more challenging in a different way because with Disneyland, there are just so many attractions that I like are fighting for that top spot. DCA, it's a little bit different for me. There's a few that like I immediately think of, but then there's some that when I really, meander on it, I'm like, man, I really enjoy that ride. I really do. And sometimes I don't think about them, but every time I hop on, I'm like, I'm so glad you exist. I'm so glad you exist. Either way, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed it. And oh yes, yeah, I was just getting to that. Yes, I wanted to thank everybody for liking and sharing. It really helps us out, and we do appreciate it very, very much. And yep. Oh, yeah, yes. Also, a huge thank you to all the members and the patrons supporting us financially. We do appreciate it. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Thank you. And until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, next time then you can do it, okay?